5 questions insurance adjusters don't want you to ask. The moment you get on the phone with that insurance adjuster, they're already counting on you not knowing what to say. And if you don't ask the right questions, you could be walking straight into a low-ball settlement. I'm Doug Bernetti, a personal injury attorney here in Florida, and I've seen these conversations cost people tens of thousands of dollars. So in this video, I'll give you 5 questions that flip the script. Questions they hope you never ask so you can protect your rights and keep the leverage where it belongs with you. Question number 1. Can you show me where it says I have to give a recorded statement? This question alone can completely shift the tone of the conversation with an insurance adjuster. Most people don't realize they're under no obligation to give a recorded statement, especially when it's the other party's insurance company. Let's make this really clear. Under Florida law, unless you're filing a claim with your own insurance company and your policy has a specific clause requiring it, you're not legally obligated to be recorded. That adjuster on the other end of the line may sound friendly and even helpful, but their job is to limit what the insurance company has to pay, not to help you heal or get you justice or to be fairly treated. And they're trained to do it strategically. I've reviewed dozens of statements where injured people casually said something like, "I didn't think I was that hurt at first," or "I'm feeling better now," just trying to be polite. But later, those phrases were used to argue that the injury must not have been serious, even when an MRI proved otherwise. In the case of Hurtado versus DeSouza, the court highlighted how inconsistent or incomplete statements made early on, particularly during recorded calls, were leveraged to question the plaintiff's credibility. That's why I tell every client, never go on record until you fully understand your injuries and your rights. So when an adjuster asks for that statement, say it calmly. Can you point me to where in the law or contract language that requires I give you a statement? Watch how quickly their tone changes. Question number 2. What are the policy limits on this claim? This is one of the most important questions you can ask, and one of the ones adjusters really hope you don't. Under Florida Statute 627.4137, once you request it in writing, the insurer must provide a copy of the policy, including the limits of liability coverage, within 30 days. But most people never ask. They just assume there's enough coverage or trust the adjuster's vague answer. Knowing those limits is critical. Let me give you a real-world example. A client of mine was rear-ended in a crash and had $75,000 in medical bills. The other driver only had $10,000 worth of liability insurance. We quickly discovered that because we knew to ask. That allowed us to pivot our client's uninsured/underinsured motorist coverage, where we secured another $100,000 because we planned ahead and because we knew to ask. If we hadn't asked, we might have wasted months negotiating with an insurance company that was never going to pay more than $10,000. Meanwhile, medical bills would pile up, credit scores would drop, and the client would be left holding the bag. Policy limits aren't just a number. They define your strategy, and asking for them early shows the adjuster you're not flying blind. Question number 3. Are you admitting your insured is at fault? This is a question that makes most adjusters squirm. Why? Because if they formally admit fault, they're no longer negotiating whether their client is responsible. They're negotiating how much to pay. In Florida, we follow a system called comparative negligence. This means your compensation can be reduced by your percentage of fault. So even if the other driver was clearly negligent, the insured company may try to pin 10%, 20%, or even 50% of the blame on you just to reduce your payout. I've seen cases where someone was rear-ended at a stoplight and the insurance company still tried to argue that my client, quote, stopped too suddenly. It's absurd, but it's strategic. That's why this question matters. Are you accepting liability on behalf of your insured? If they say yes, you have a much cleaner path to resolving your claim fairly. If they won't answer or they dodge, it's a red flag that they're setting up to dispute fault, no matter how clear the accident seemed. And here's a tip. If they admit fault verbally, follow up with an email confirming that statement. Written confirmation holds more weight in future negotiations and can cut the noise when a case starts to stall. Question number 4. Is this your first offer or your final offer? This question is all about exposing the game, because There's always a game. The first offer from an insurance adjuster is rarely the best. In fact, in many cases, it's not even a serious starting point. It's a test. They want to see if you'll bite, especially if you're stressed, injured, or out of work. Let me tell you about one case. I had a client that was offered $6,500 after a crash that caused a torn rotator cuff in the shoulder. We pushed back, brought in medical records, a surgeon's records, and the physical therapy reports. The case was settled for almost $200,000. As you can see, the first $6,500 offer was just bait. That wasn't really what the case was worth. By asking, "Is this your final offer?" you are flipping the power dynamic. It signals to the adjuster that you understand negotiation, and if they say it's their final offer, great. Now you know what you're up against. If they admit it's just the beginning, you're opening the door to get closer to the actual value of your claim. In the case of De La Rosa versus Zaquiera, the court affirmed that plaintiffs are entitled to full and fair compensation. That doesn't happen without pressure, and pressure doesn't happen without questions like this one. Question number 5, will this cover my future care? This might be the single most overlooked question, and it's the one with the highest long-term risk. Most people think a settlement is just about reimbursing past bills, but that's only part of the story. When you sign a settlement agreement, you're signing a release. That means you give up the right to ever come back and ask for more, even if your condition gets worse or requires surgery. If you're still treating or your doctor isn't sure whether you'll need long-term care and you settle, then you're stuck. It's too late. I once had a client who didn't take our advice. She accepted a quick settlement before she even got an MRI because she wanted to get it over with. Turns out she had 2 herniated discs and needed a spinal fusion. That small settlement she got didn't even cover the diagnostic scan expenses, let alone any future surgery. That's why we work with life care planners and medical experts to project long-term costs, and we don't settle until we're confident the amount will cover everything, not just the past. So when you ask the adjuster, does this include future care, and they say yes, then follow up. Based on what medical documentation? Who evaluated the need for surgery or long-term physical therapy? If they can't back it up, they're guessing, and guessing is not a strategy for protecting your future. So let's step back and take a look at what we've just learned. You now have 5 specific questions that do more than just get information. They change the entire tone of the negotiation. You learn that recorded statements are optional in most cases and often dangerous. You learn that you're entitled to know the policy limits under Florida law, and those numbers shape your strategy. You learn that forcing a liability admission protects you from sneak attacks on fall, and that knowing whether an offer is final or a starting point empowers you to negotiate smart. Finally, that confirming coverage for future care might be the difference between financial stability and being buried in medical debt. Each of these questions puts you back in the driver's seat. They're not aggressive, they're not confrontational, but they are informed, and that's exactly what most insurance adjusters are hoping you're not. Now, before you go, there's one more thing I want to make sure you don't miss. The next video is called Why Skipping a Doctor Could Bankrupt You in Florida. I promise you, if you were in an accident and you haven't seen a doctor yet, or even if you did but waited a few days, you need to watch this next video. Because Florida has a strict 14-day rule, miss it and your claim could be dead in the water before you ever pick up the phone. So head over to that video now. It's one of the most important things you can watch to protect your health and your rights. See you over there.